Hello everyone, this is Insta here. Welcome back to my series A Legend's Tale. We are on Season 1, Episode 3, which I've called The Barbarian. Now, last episode we were introduced to the storyline of the Knights. There was this huge battle between the royal army of the Queen and the Barbarian army. Although we were actually introduced to two storylines previous episode, it was all viewed out of the perception of the knights, of the characters of the knights storyline. But this episode is going to be completely centered around the barbarians. So I hope you're excited. Let's just jump straight into this. Deep in the forest, Cadmus and several dozens of barbarians are hunting. All of them have camouflaged themselves with moss and plants to blend in perfectly with the environment. All of the barbarians look at Cadmus to wait for a signal, as he himself is looking in the distance. Eventually, someone comes running towards them. It appears to be Octavia, also camouflaged. She tells Cadmus that she has spotted them a mile further north. Cadmus orders Octavia to take some men with her. The rest has to follow him quietly. They all advance smoothly, hardly making any sound, really showing how well barbarians can adapt to the environment. They eventually reach a small hill, at which Cadmus orders the rest to hold their position. He takes a look and appears to see something on the other side of the hill. He looks back at the other barbarians and then gives the signal to attack. Upon doing so, Cadmus and all the others charge over the hilltop, straight towards a herd of what appear to be deer. The deer all run away as fast as they can, while Cadmus and his barbarians chase after them with spears. They throw several spears, but all miss. As the deer keep on sprinting, they stumble into a trap. Suddenly, Octavia and the other barbarians come lunging out of the forests, attacking the deer by surprise. The deer all try to get out as fast as they can, while all the barbarians throw their spears, eventually hitting one of the deer. It collapses as several barbarians try to put it out of its misery. The deer tries to resist, but then Cadmus comes in and holds the deer by its head. He starts talking to it, telling it not to be afraid, that everything is going to be alright. The deer appears to relax a little bit, but then Cadmus stabs it in the throat, instantly killing it. All the others, including Octavia, look at Cadmus as he tells them that that's how you kill an animal. Several barbarians grab the deer in order to take it to their camp. Cadmus looks at Octavia and tells her that she did well. She smiles and is glad to have pleased him. Cadmus orders all of them to head back. We see how Cadmus, Octavia, and all the others walk through the woods towards their camp. They eventually arrive at the camp where the other thousands of barbarian soldiers are. They place the deer on a pile of other hunted animals, enough to feed everyone. Cadmus then walks through his camp. He sees how a lot of his men and women are growing weary and tired of the war against Queen Anthea. He goes to the main tent that has been set up to visit his war council, where they go over the state of things. It appears that they win every battle that takes place in their woods, but every time they fight the knights of Queen Anthea in the field, their loss is inevitable. Cadmus admits his mistake, that he became too reckless, and that his attitude was a reason they lost so many in the last battle against the army of Queen Anthea. One of his officers suggests a peace treaty, much to Octavia's dismay. She believes that if they ask for peace, then the whole world will forever know them as the people who ran away. Barbarians are known for their fierceness in battle. No defeat, no surrender. That's what they are known for. Several commanders agree, but others believe that the things Octavia is saying right now will mean suicide for all of them. They are the last tribe of the barbarians. If they all died for a futile cause, then the world would never even remember them. This is their legacy that they are working for right now. They all look at Cadmus to make the final decision. He thinks for a minute. Eventually, he comes up with a plan. He decides to fall back to their home and make their stand there. That's the land they know best, and that's where they will have the most chance in defeating Anthea. They will not surrender, neither will they pursue the royal army. Most of the commanders find this a good decision. Octavia, however, doesn't. She thinks that this is the same thing as running away. She confronts Cadmus by saying if they go back to their home, then Queen Anthea will view that as a retreat, and then she will never send her army towards them, meaning that it's the same thing as surrendering all the same. Cadmus understands her, but he assures all of them that this is the best thing to do right now. Afterwards, Cadmus walks around his camp and interacts with several of his people. It appears now clearly that Cadmus, although being the barbarian king, is not a savage or a mad killer as so many claim to believe, but just a man who wants his people to be safe from anyone who invades their lands. That night, everyone eats in the camp. A lot of them are having a good time, others still mourn over all the ones they have lost from the last battle. Cadmus walks around and smiles as he sees how a lot of them still manage to keep their spirits up high. Still, he knows it's a hard time. He sees Octavia sitting on a hilltop on her own and he decides to join her. He sits next to her and hands her over a cup with some ale. They have a calm conversation in which he tries to explain that they need to think about their people now and not only their reputation. It's about their survival. Octavia understands, but she keeps on believing that they can't show any form of weakness. She tries to persuade them to at least hold their ground and ask for reinforcements from their home or something. Cadmus makes it very clear that he has made his decision and that's final. Octavia keeps on trying to persuade him, however, saying that they have to show the army of Anthea their strength. Cadmus says that they have, and they lost 45,000 men and women because of it. This silences Octavia. Cadmus puts his hand on Octavia's shoulder and tells her that they have to look after each other. The world might think evil of the barbarians, but as long as they know they are not the savages as so many people claim they are, then they will be alright. Octavia remains silent. As Cadmus gets up to go back to the others, he notices some lightning and thunderclouds in the far distance. Unlike the common folk, barbarians are well aware of the myths and legends about the world's end, and what lies beneath it. They believe the stories about the ancient evil, and as Cadmus looks at the lightning taking place hundreds of miles away, he does show some levels of concern. The next morning, everyone is preparing to leave. Cadmus again is visited by Octavia, who tries to change his mind. If they pack all their things and go home, Queen Anthea will find them weak, and if they are no longer feared, then the rest of the world will laugh at them. Cadmus says that a good king is not someone who wages war after war. A good king is someone who wages war for the good of his people, and this war against Anthea is anything but good for his people. Octavia is clearly not on the same page here and warns him that Anthea will send men to ambush them in the middle of the night, and at that moment it will be too late. Before Octavia can say more, Cadmus silences her and sends her away, making Octavia angry. Cadmus then climbs on his horse and commands everyone to move out. Thus, they begin their long march back home, towards the barbarian hearth. The barbarians march across the forests that separate the boglands, through the mountains. A mighty sight it is. Yet the mountains that are next to the boglands aren't the highest. The ones that are formed around the barbarian hearth are. The highest one is said to be 6 kilometers high. You can see all of the ancient if you find the right spot. Yet only a madman would dare to cross those mountains. The only way to safely reach the barbarian hearth is throughout a mountain pass. Large enough for any army to come across, but it's the only way. The mountains provide a perfect natural shield against any threat. In front of those mighty mountains lies the Valley of the Barbarians, a huge open plain valley that sort of marks the large entrance before entering the pass between the mountains to the barbarian hearth. As they march through the valley, Cadmus is clearly happy to see how he feels like he's saving his people for once, instead of leading them into a pointless war. From a distance, he can see Octavia riding with some other people, clearly still angry at him for making these decisions. Octavia has a conversation with several people who agree with her that this is a sign of weakness and they can't trust Queen Anthea for not coming over to their home and kill all of them. Cadmus clearly has his concerns as he sees how Octavia is talking bitterly with some other riders, but he trusts her enough that she won't do anything foolish. He has known her for years. Of course she has her temper. This always translates into a good taste for battle, making her one of the finest warriors of his tribe. She has always been loyal to him. He looks to the sky as it is clear as night and as blue as the distance. Not that any one of them has ever seen the distance. In front of them are the mountains that surround the barbarian hearth, and right between them lies the pass. They have made this journey several times, but at least Cadmus intends now to stay at their home for quite a while. Cadmus and his troops arrive at their home. It's right on the other side of the mountain pass, at a huge lake surrounded by mountains and hilltops. It's a perfect natural location to hunt and survive. They're all welcomed by all the rest of their tribe, villagers and children. The barbarian hearth is a huge camp made up of thousands of strong tents and wooden houses, all made by the materials nature has provided for them. A horn is sounded, and all the villagers come running towards the returning heroes. Cadmus dismounts his horse and greets everyone while Octavia stays in the background, as she's still bitter. She hates how Cadmus is being welcomed as if he's some kind of war hero, yet he's the one who ran away from the fight in her eyes. Cadmus reunites with a lot of people, again showing us how respected and loved he is. This moment of joy and relief doesn't go too well for everyone, as a lot of the villagers quickly learn of the fallen ones. 45,000 sons, daughters, husbands, wives, fathers, mothers. Tears are shed, and some even collapse on the ground. Cadmus sees this happening and becomes silent himself. As the rest of all the barbarians arrive, Cadmus goes to his main tent on the top of the hill that is centered at the edge of the camp. Here he finds his wife, Moira. She sits on a terrace in front of her tent. She sees how Cadmus walks over to her, and they both embrace each other. She looks deep in his eyes and sees the suffering he undergoes. Seeing his people like this, it's not something a king wants to see. She hugs and kisses him, telling him that he did the best he could, and everyone knows it. They have a sweet reunion and express their love. Sometime later, they both sit in their tent. Cadmus explains to her that he had to come home, or otherwise he might have lost all of his soldiers, which means more than half of his people, fighting a war they probably could never even win to begin with. He told his commanders, including Octavia, that he is still at war with Antia, officially, but he knows better than that. He hopes that returning home will put some sense into the minds of his soldiers. Glory is glory, but even a taste of victory after a bloody battle will not surpass the look of seeing your loved one again after too long. Moira understands and tells him that she's proud of him. Not everyone could face defeat and accept it the way he did. The amounts of kings and queens who marched off into battle believing they were invincible and eventually died because of that belief are countless. Cadmus responds by saying that there are many of his people who believe that those kings and queens were the bravest. Moira laughs and says that they might have been brave, but in the end they were all just stupid. This makes Cadmus laugh, comforting him. He tells her that a ceremony for the fallen still has to be done. Moira understands and promises that it will be alright. Tonight will be a night to remember, tomorrow will be a day to build. That night, a huge bonfire is made at the edge of the lake. All the dead have been left on the battlefield since there was no way of retrieving them. Everyone stands around the fire in silence. The fire burns as high as the tallest tree, almost being hypnotic. Cadmus stands in the front and gives a speech. The ones who have fallen in the war against Anthea will never be forgotten. Every one of them died as every barbarian who has ever lived wishes to die, in service of what they believe in. Their spirits are free, their memories fly through the eternity. It's up to them now to keep them alive, as they will keep on doing so until the end of time. Cadmus goes to stand next to Moira, who holds his arm. Cadmus looks at Octavia, who stands further away. She looks at him as well. As he smiles at her, she gives him nothing in return. Nothing but a cold stare. Afterwards, they have a big feast under the night sky, to celebrate the return of Cadmus and the rest, and to remember the fallen. Cadmus and Moira sit at the head of the long table in the midst of the camp. Everyone celebrates, eats, drinks, and laughs. This is their moment to let off all the steam they have in them. Cadmus sees how Octavia sits in a corner with some others, but doesn't attempt to go to her. Moira tries to persuade Cadmus into talking with her, but he refuses. He says that she needs some time for herself. If he goes to her now, there will only come harsh words with no content. They continue to feast until the sun comes up in the east. This is how barbarians celebrate the return of their king and the memories of the dead. No emotional singing, no dramatic hymns, a speech, a bonfire, lots of ale, lots of food, and lots of laughter. As the first rays of sunlight shine over the camp, everyone heads back to their tent or house. Cadmus and Moira go back to the hill on which their house is. Cadmus tells her to already go inside. He first wants to have a moment alone. As Moira goes inside, he heads to the highest hill overlooking the camp. As he gets there, he has a beautiful view of the whole Barbarian hearth, with the lake and the burned out bonfire next to it. It's a peaceful sight. He smiles and is truly happy. This is the life he wants for his people. This is what they all deserve. Now they will all go to sleep and wake up in what will become a new age for the barbarians. At least, that is what Cadmus hopes it will be. Alright guys, that was episode 3, season 1, The Barbarian. Without a doubt, it is the calmest and most slow-paced episode of the entire season. There really isn't that much going on. It ends with the aftermath, sort of Cadmus and Octavia and the remaining of their army recovering from the battle of previous episodes. They have marched back towards their home. There's been a reunion. We are introduced to Cadmus's wife, Moira. There's a huge reunion, but also really the growing of a conflict between Cadmus and Octavia. Cadmus believes that he just wants the best of his people, and war isn't the best for his people right now. But Octavia is really all about status and about titles and, about how the world views them. She wants to be, she wants to stick to the traditional point of view the barbarians have, is just to go all out war and to die fighting if need be. That's really how she's kind of like installed. And so those two viewpoints really clash in this episode. Not that much, but you really see the growing of a sort of conflict. But it has been a very calm episode, There's also been a hint at the world's end. Again, that's a third reference in the 3 different storylines thus far, which I think is important, because the thing that's going on at the world's end is actually very important, but of course you don't know what it is. It's kind of a mystery. But yeah, this episode is all centered around the barbarians, kind of to give them a background, to really show, look, these are just people who fight for their own land. They fight just for survival. When they sense threats and danger, they will march into war. They're not just the mad dog killers as pretty much the entirety of the continent views them as. So this really was the totally different change of perspective. So yeah guys, that was it. Stay tuned for episode 4 that will be coming tomorrow. Alright, this was Insta. See you guys later.